Hey guys, I'm here. Just finished watching The Adam Project over on Netflix. This is the latest film from the streamer to star Ryan Reynolds. It's directed by Shawn Levy, who will be teaming up with Ryan again in the future for Deadpool 3, as I believe it was just announced as of recording this video. I think yesterday there was an official announcement made that Shawn Levy is going to be the one helming that project. So if you want to kind of get a feel for that dynamic, I think this would be a good way to set that up, because Ryan Reynolds plays the typical Ryan Reynolds character in this, as he plays this man from the future who has to team up with his younger self to save that very future. And his younger self is played by Walker Scobell, and their dynamic is pretty interesting as it plays out in this movie, as they're dealing with their own traumas from two different points in time, and seeing those character interactions, the way they play off of each other, as well as seeing this kid do a pretty decent job at being what is essentially a young clone of Ryan Reynolds in the way that he acts. You know, he tries to echo and kind of emulate that kind of quippiness, that quippy nature that Ryan Reynolds is just really known for. And it's kind of, it works here and there. There's some times where in the script, I think it gets a little too heavy-handed with some of the dialogue and some of the interactions, that it doesn't really feel natural, but most of the time, it's fun, and they have some really powerful and strong scenes together. Joining them along for the ride is Jennifer Garner, Zoe Saldaña, Mark Ruffalo, and Catherine Keener on this sci-fi time travel action comedy that has a lot of great visuals in it. I think like the aesthetic of the film is really like honed in. I really like the look and feel of a lot of the futuristic elements in here, as well as some of the things that they kind of like, you could see the kind of inspirations that they have from other mediums. I think the film even calls out some of these references as well, because Ryan Reynolds as a kid, the kid version played by Walker Scobell, is a little bit of a science nerd as well as like a movie geek. So there's a lot of references to other things throughout whenever things are unveiled about the future, as well as the tech that, you know, Ryan brings with him from the future to help with this whole little journey. And there's surprisingly some really good heart in this film. I found myself multiple times throughout getting worked up, getting pretty emotional, because I think at the core of this, outside of the sci-fi element, the action element, and the ticking clock of it all, I think that a lot of the core elements of this movie that work really well is about a family dealing with loss and working through tragedy, and how that changes throughout time, and how you deal with it, don't deal with it, and how your perspective kind of shifts when you're going through your ages. When you grow up, there's different ways you remember things. There's things you forget. There's things that you don't quite appreciate in the same way. And there's some things that you learn to appreciate more with time. And they play with these things really well. And I found myself multiple times getting really worked up and getting emotional at some of the things that they're tackling in this. And there's some great scene work between a lot of the people in here. I will say, I think the weakest element of this, for me, was the kid, Walker Scobell. I don't think he did a terrible job. Of course, he's just trying to play a younger Ryan Reynolds, and I think that's kind of where he falls into that pit trap, where it just seems, where I believe it from Ryan, where I'm so used to this kind of behavior. Seeing it come out of this kid, I just felt like it was a kid pretending to be Ryan Reynolds, and it was just like, felt weird to me a lot of the time. It didn't really feel like it was the character coming to life, but more so Ryan Reynolds just injecting himself into the story. It's hard to quantify that, because that's just kind of Ryan Reynolds in every movie anymore. But Ryan Reynolds has some great scene work with Mark Ruffalo, with Jennifer Garner, with Zoe Saldaña, that really just hits hard. And everybody is acting their butts off in this film. And I think, like I said, the script itself is not the strongest when it comes to some of these interactions, but when it comes to the moments that matter, I think it is on point. And of course, when it gets into the nitty-gritty of the science and the time travel elements of this, it actually answers some of the questions that I was having as I was going along with the film. And, you know, if you're just kind of curious, I do have my reaction to this over on the Patreon, or the YouTube memberships get access to it as well here, if you're interested at all in seeing that. It's really interesting, because as the movie was playing out, I was like, wow, what about this? What about this? And it would address that. There are obvious ways that the time travel thing could start to fall apart, but in the internal logic of the movie, it does enough to address a lot of those concerns, as well as provide its own sciencey hand-waviness of some of the other aspects of it, that it actually ended up working pretty well in it. As far as the way that it works and operates and the rules that they've set up for it in this film. So it sticks to those rules and works out pretty well for the most part. The action's pretty solid, though inconsistent at points. The CGI, just the same. I think it looks great in some aspects. There's sometimes it's not so great. There's some de-aging effects because there's one character in particular that plays themselves in 2 different points. But it looks pretty good in some scenes. In some scenes, it's still a little rubbery. But outside of that, it's still pretty impressive still that this technology continues to evolve. I think that it's definitely not like to its what I think we've seen in some Marvel films, and it's definitely not to the level we've seen in the Book of Boba Fett here recently with Luke, but it's pretty good. And I think they knew the limitations of it and worked within it pretty well, that it didn't get too Uncanny Valley-ish. But for me, the action, the sci-fi, all of that was secondary to the primary focus of this film, or what I felt the primary focus was, and that's this broken family. But for me, throughout this entire thing, I thought the action, the sci-fi elements, all of that was serviceable for the story at hand, but it was all secondary to what I felt like was the main drive and heart of the film, and that's this broken family that is struggling to get through and deal with and move on from this tragedy that's happened in their past. And I think that all works really well. I think it was fun. I had a lot of fun with it, despite, obviously getting sad. Overall, it was a really cute, wholesome, fun action movie. And if you got some time to kill over the weekend, I do recommend giving it a go. But that being said, guys, I want to keep this short and sweet. I want to know what you thought. Sound off in the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Feel free to join us in the Discord. We're going to talk about it there as well. Links to that on my socials are down below. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends, Manny Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Philly Vane, Yorick, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Mary Bradley, Nate Prouty, and Melita. Thank you guys, as always, for your support, as well as everybody who's been joining the Patreon and supporting the channel. The likes, the comments, and the subscriptions. I love you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody.